The moment you lose control of your mouth, your mood, your money, or your mind, you're handing your power to the world. Control these four and nothing can break you. Let's talk about real power, the kind that starts within. You know, when I was young, I talked too much. I thought the more I spoke, the more people would understand me, like me, respect me. But what I didn't realize was that every word I said was exposing my weakness, not my strength. Back then, I had dreams bigger than the world around me, but I had no skills, no resources, and worst of all, no results. The only thing I had was my voice, and I used it too much. I talk about what I wanted to build, the ideas I had, the success I imagined, but it was just noise. People who follow noise, they follow action, patience, and wisdom. There was a time when I was rejected from 30 jobs. Even when I applied to work at a fast food restaurant, 24 people applied. They accepted 23. I was the only one rejected. That kind of failure shakes your confidence. And when your confidence is low, you try to talk your way into belonging. You explain yourself too much. You try to make people see your worth by speaking it. But I learned something powerful. Talking doesn't prove value. Silence does. When you learn to keep quiet and observe, the world begins to speak to you in ways it never did before. You see, when you speak too much, you often reveal too much. Your fears, your doubts, your plans, they all get exposed to people who may not understand them or may even use them against you. In my early days trying to build something from nothing, I shared my ideas freely, thinking everyone would support me. But instead, I got laughed at. People said, this guy doesn't know anything about technology, about business, about leadership. And you know what? They were right at the time. But what they didn't see was that I had the hunger to learn and the willingness to fail again and again. Still, I realized that the more I talked, the more they doubted me. So I stopped explaining. I started building. That's when things began to shift. I started using my mouth not to impress, but to express only when it mattered. I learned to listen more to my team, to my competitors, even to my failures. Listening gave me understanding, silence gave me strategy, and eventually when I did speak, people listened, not because my voice was loud, but because it was earned. Control over your mouth is not just about avoiding arguments or staying quiet in conflict. It's about understanding timing. There are moments in meetings when I wanted to shout my idea, defend myself, argue against criticism. But the strongest people in the room aren't the ones who speak first. They are the ones who watch, listen, and speak last. With clarity and purpose. You don't gain power by shouting. You gain it by choosing your words like a sculptor chooses his tools. Carefully, deliberately, with intention. There were days I felt broken. People misunderstood me. Investors laughed at my ideas. Friends walked away. And still, I chose not to lash out, not to beg, not to explain endlessly. I stayed quiet and worked. Every rejection taught me something that words never could. Every failure became a chapter. I didn't need to speak. Because eventually, my results spoke louder than anything I could have said in defense. Now, when young people ask me, what's the secret to earning respect when you have nothing? I tell them this: control your mouth. Speak only when your words add value. Don't just talk about your dreams. Live them. Don't defend your failures. Learn from them. Let your silence build you. Let your actions explain you. When I look back, I realized one of the hardest things in life is not controlling your circumstances. It's controlling your emotion, your mood, your reaction. That's the real test. Because let me tell you, I've been in situations that made me want to explode with frustration. I've been laughed at, ignored, underestimated, rejected over and over. And in those moments, it's so easy to let anger take over, to feel bitter, to let your mood destroy your focus. But I learned that emotions are not your enemy. They are your mirror. They show you where you need to grow, not where you need to go. There was a time when I felt completely lost. I had this big dream to build something that had never been done before, especially in my part of the world, but no one believed in me. not investors, not partners, not even most of the people around me. I remember giving presentations, pouring my heart into explaining the vision I had, only to see people smirking or rolling their eyes. After one meeting, I walked out of the room and just stood in the hallway thinking, what am I doing? Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just chasing something that can't happen. In those moments, your emotions scream the loudest. Frustration, self-doubt, sadness, they come rushing in. But here's what I realized. Emotions are temporary, but decisions are permanent. If I made a decision in anger or fear, I would destroy everything I was building. So I had to learn to breathe, to pause, to wait. Not because I was weak, but because I didn't want a strong emotion to make a permanent mistake. And I've seen people lose opportunities, relationships, and peace simply because they couldn't control their mood. A bad day turned into a bad decision. A single insult turned into years of regret. I didn't want that for myself. I had already lost so much. Dozens of job applications rejected. People calling me unqualified, a failure, even a joke. But instead of snapping, I chose to stay calm. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I wanted to control how I responded. There was a day, I still remember it clearly, we were in the early stages of trying to build the foundation of our company. Nothing was stable. Everything was uncertain. We were running out of money. Some of our closest people started leaving. And during one intense meeting, there was so much pressure, so many things going wrong. Someone on my team, frustrated and scared, said something very disrespectful to me in front of everyone. And it stung. My pride was burning. I could have yelled. I could have fired them on the spot. But instead, I looked at them and said, I understand how you feel. This is hard for all of us. Let's talk later when things are calm. And after that meeting, I didn't go and cry or scream. I sat in silence. I told myself, if I want to lead, I need to be the most stable person in the room, even when I'm the most afraid. That was a turning point, because after that, people saw I wasn't just trying to be a boss. I was trying to be a real leader. And leaders don't let mood control mission. Every emotion I felt, fear, anger, anxiety, I use it as fuel, not as fire. I use it to think deeper, to reflect, to understand people better. When you're building something from nothing, you're already walking a road full of storms. If you let every drop of rain shake you, you'll never reach your destination. You need to walk through it with calm. Even when you're soaking wet inside, I've had days where I felt like breaking down. Nights where sleep didn't come because the pressure was so heavy. And in those times, controlling my mood wasn't about pretending everything was okay. It was about reminding myself, this feeling will pass. But what I build today will last. And that thought gave me strength. It gave me the power to keep going. People often think control means suppression. No, it means direction. You don't need to kill your emotions. You need to train them. Understand them. Ask, why am I angry? Instead of just reacting in anger. Ask, what is this fear telling me? Instead of running from it. That's how you grow. That's how you lead. If you want to build anything great, whether it's a business, a team, or a life, you need to be the master of your mood, not its servant. Because the world will test you, people will provoke you, life will frustrate you, but your response, that's your power. That's what separates those who dream from those who build money. It's something people either fear too much or chase too blindly. But I've learned through a lot of pain that money isn't just about numbers. It's about discipline. It's about how you think, how you plan, how you behave when no one is watching. When I was younger, I didn't come from a family with wealth. I didn't grow up with financial security. I knew the value of a single coin because sometimes it was all I had. And yet, like so many others, I also made the mistake of thinking that once I started earning, things would become easier. That money would solve my problems. But I was wrong. When we started working on the dream of building something real, something valuable, we had nothing. No office, no money, no experience, just a few people, a tiny room and a big vision. I remember the early days so clearly. Days when we couldn't even afford decent chairs. Days when we had to borrow just to keep the lights on. We used to gather in a small apartment and talk about the future we wanted, while wondering if we could make it through the next week. That kind of pressure either breaks you or makes you wiser. It taught me that managing money is not just about how much you have, but how much control you have over what you have. I've seen people make 10 times more than me and still be stressed, still be stuck, still be drowning in their own spending habits. And I've seen people with almost nothing build peace slowly and steadily because they respected every dollar they earned. That's the word I want to emphasize. If you don't respect your money, it won't stay with you. It won't grow for you. It won't fight for you when you need it most. In our early years, every small expense felt like a major decision. We couldn't afford mistakes. I remember once when we had a bit of cash come in from a small investor. The team was excited. People were talking about upgrading things, renting a bigger space, buying better equipment. But I said, no, not yet. Not because I didn't want to grow, but because we hadn't yet built a foundation strong enough to hold that kind of growth. I told them, let's make the small money behave first. If we can control this, we'll be ready for more. And that decision, holding back, being patient, managing carefully, it helped us survive when many others were falling apart. Money is a test. It reveals your habits. It exposes your weaknesses. If you're the kind of person who spends to feel important, you'll always be broke, no matter how much you earn. If you spend to impress others, you're just renting an image. I've seen people lose everything trying to look successful instead of working to become successful. And when you lose everything because of ego or lack of discipline, it doesn't just hurt your finances. It hurts your confidence. It breaks your rhythm. It makes you question everything. There was a time when I had to go 6 months without taking a single salary from my own company. Others were getting paid and I wasn't. Some people said I was foolish, but I believed in the long term. I believed that building something sustainable meant sacrificing personal comfort in the short term. And I was okay with that. I lived simply. I wore the same clothes, ate the same meals, didn't buy anything unnecessary, not because I couldn't, but because I had a bigger goal. That discipline allowed me to stay focused when others were distracted. It gave me strength when things were tight. And eventually, it gave me freedom. See, money itself is neutral. It's not good or bad. It simply reflects your decisions. If you chase it without direction, it will run from you. But if you earn it with discipline and use it with wisdom, it becomes a tool for peace, for growth, for independence. And that's a goal. Not to be rich in lifestyle, but to be rich in options. To not worry about tomorrow, to sleep peacefully at night knowing you're not in debt to your impulses. I meet young people all the time who want to make millions. And I don't blame them. It's natural to dream big. But I always ask them, can you manage hundreds? Can you respect thousands? Because if you can't control small money, you never be trusted with big money. The habits you build now will follow you forever. Save when you want to spend. Invest when it feels uncertain. Choose growth over appearance. Because in the end, it's not how much money you make that defines you, it's how much you keep and how wisely you use it. There's a saying I've learned through experience. If you don't control your mind, someone else will. The world is noisy, full of opinions, judgments, doubts, and distractions. And if you're not careful, those voices on the outside become the voice inside. That's how you lose yourself. That's how you start living a life designed by fear instead of vision. In my own life, I've faced so many moments where I could have allowed the opinions of others to rewrite the story I was trying to create. But I learned that my mind, my thoughts were the foundation of everything. If I couldn't lead my own thinking, I had no business trying to lead anything else. I wasn't born confident. In fact, I was rejected again and again. I applied to many universities. Most of them said no. I applied to many jobs. Most didn't even call back. I remember one situation clearly. 24 people applied for a job at a local fast food restaurant. 23 were accepted. I was the only one who was not. Can you imagine how small that made me feel? I started asking myself, is there something wrong with me? Those rejections didn't just bruise my ego. They invaded my mind. They tried to plant the idea that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't meant to succeed. And honestly, for a while, I started to believe it. But then I realized something powerful. Those voices, they weren't mine. They came from people who didn't know me, didn't see my heart, didn't understand my vision. So why was I giving them space in my head? Why was I letting people who gave me 5 minutes of their judgment shape the rest of my life? That's when I knew I had to take back control of my mind. In those early years, when I was trying to build something out of nothing, there were so many nights I couldn't sleep. Not because of hard work, but because of fear. Fear that it wouldn't work. Fear that everyone who laughed at me was right. Fear that I wasn't smart enough to lead. But I did something most people forget to do. I started talking to myself differently. I began to plant new thoughts. I told myself, I might not be the best, but I will work harder than the best. I told myself, they don't believe in me now, but one day they'll wish they had. That kind of thinking didn't make the fear disappear, but it gave me something stronger to hold on to. There were many days I walked into meetings where no one took me seriously. I didn't look like a typical CEO. I didn't speak perfect English. I didn't have an MBA from a top university. But I walked in anyway. I listened. I learned. I stayed calm. And when I spoke with belief. Not because I was the smartest, but because I had trained my mind not to collapse under pressure. I had trained it to focus when things got hard. You see, most people think success is about talent or timing. But I believe it starts with thought. Because a disciplined mind builds disciplined actions. And disciplined actions build a different life. But if your mind is full of comparison, fear, and doubt, no strategy will work. That's why some people stay stuck no matter how many opportunities come their way. They don't fail in reality, they fail in mentality. When we were building our company, we had nothing. Just a dream, a few people, and a world full of reasons to quit. Every time we made progress, something would go wrong. Funding would fall through. Partnerships would collapse. People would quit. The pressure was heavy. And I saw many around me break. Not physically, but mentally. They lost the battle in their own heads. They let the setbacks become personal, but I couldn't afford that. I had to be the one who believed even when no one else did. I had to be the one who stayed calm even when things were falling apart. And trust me, there were days when I wanted to give up. Days when I thought, maybe this dream isn't for someone like me. But then I'd go for a long walk, sit quietly, and talk to myself. I'd remind myself of where I came from, of how far we'd come, of what we were building. That internal conversation saved me more than any motivation from the outside ever could. Because when your mind is strong, no rejection can destroy you. No failure can define you. That's the kind of control I'm talking about. Not the control where you block emotions or avoid challenges, but the kind where you don't let your thoughts drift aimlessly. The kind where you choose what to believe. Where you speak to yourself like someone worth fighting for. Where you don't let the world write your story, you write it yourself. Word by word, thought by thought. There's something people don't often realize. Before others can respect you, you must learn to respect yourself. And self-respect doesn't come from talent or titles. It comes from control. When you can control your words, your emotions, your habits, and your decisions, people notice. Not because you demand their respect, but because you've earned it without saying a word. I've lived through many moments where I had no power, no position, no success. But even in those moments, I could still choose to control myself And that quiet control became the first step toward earning the respect of others. In the beginning, I was nobody. I wasn't special. I wasn't rich. I didn't have a family name to open doors. What I had were rejections, many of them. I was turned down by schools, companies, and even friends who didn't believe in me. I remember applying to jobs just to survive and not even receiving a reply. Or worse, being the only one rejected in a group of applicants. That kind of experience can destroy your confidence if you let it. And for a while, I did let it affect me. I began to feel like I didn't matter. But something shifted when I realized that how people treat me isn't what defines me. How I respond is. If I become angry, bitter, or hopeless, I've given them power over me. But if I stay calm, stay focused, stay respectful, even in pain, I'm taking that power back. That's where true leadership begins. Not in leading others, but in leading yourself. When no one is watching, when everything inside you is screaming to give up or lash out, that's when you're building something strong, something real, character. I had to lead myself before I could lead a team. That meant controlling my mood when things went wrong, and they often did. In the early days of building our company, we had no structure. Just a group of people trying to do something that felt impossible. There was stress, pressure, disagreement. People left. People doubted. But I had to stay steady. I had to be the one who didn't panic, didn't blame, didn't react emotionally. And over time, the team saw that. They saw I was not just chasing success. I was practicing discipline. That's when respect started to grow. Respect doesn't come from being loud. It doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes when people see how you behave under pressure. Do you lose control? Do you give in to fear? Or do you remain grounded, focused, humble? These are the things that people remember. I've had investors tell me, we didn't believe in your idea at first, but we believe in your discipline. That kind of respect isn't given, it's observed, tested, earned. There was one moment I'll never forget. We were meeting with a group of potential partners. It was a big opportunity for us. But during the meeting, they questioned our plan in a way that felt dismissive, almost insulting. My team was furious. They wanted to walk out. But I told them, listen, let's stay calm. I asked questions. I listened closely. And in the end, we didn't agree. But we left that room with our dignity intact. Months later, one of those same people reached out and said, we respected the way you handled that situation. We'd like to talk again. That is the power of self-control. It speaks long after the moment is over. The other thing I've learned is that control builds trust. If people see that you don't change with every emotion, that you don't break under pressure, they begin to trust you. They feel safe around you. And when people feel safe, they follow. Not because you force them, but because they believe in you. That belief comes from consistency. I never pretended to be perfect. I made mistakes, but I stayed consistent. I kept showing up. I kept working. I kept growing. That consistency became my credibility. Sometimes we want people to respect us for our vision, but the truth is they respect how we carry ourselves more than what we say we'll do. They respect how we treat others when no one is looking. They respect how we handle failure, how we respond to criticism, how we move forward after disappointment. That's why controlling yourself is more powerful than trying to control others. Because when you lead yourself with strength, the world starts to respond differently. Not immediately, but eventually. Respect always catches up to character. I didn't get to where I am because I had power. I got here because I kept control when I had nothing else. I didn't let rejection define me. I didn't let failure break me. I didn't let success change me. And in every season, whether it was pain or progress, I chose discipline over reaction. That discipline built respect quietly, steadily, permanently. Control builds respect. And respect builds everything else. Everyone talks about freedom. Freedom to live how you want, do what you love, go where you please. But very few understand that true freedom doesn't come from comfort. It comes from discipline. And I learned that the hard way. When you're young and struggling, it's easy to believe that freedom will come once you have money, once you're successful, once people recognize your name. But the truth is, those things don't give you freedom. They can trap you even more if you don't know how to control yourself. Discipline may look like sacrifice in the moment, but it's the seed that grows into peace later. I still remember the days when I had nothing. Not just financially, but emotionally. I had dreams that no one believed in. I had ideas that made people laugh. I would walk into rooms with confidence and walk out questioning myself because no one took me seriously. People didn't just say no. They said I was wasting my time, that I didn't have what it takes. I applied to dozens of jobs just to survive. Most didn't even bother to respond. Even the places that seemed so basic, they all rejected me. I began to feel like I wasn't worth much at all. During that time, it would have been easy to give up, easy to find excuses, easy to take the path that looked comfortable. But I made a decision to stay disciplined. I woke up early, even when there was no job to go to. I studied things I didn't understand. I worked on ideas that looked foolish to everyone else. I said no to distractions, no to short-term pleasures, no to easy ways out. Not because I enjoy struggling, but because I saw something further down the road, something others couldn't see. And in those quiet days when no one was watching, I built the habits that later built my life. Discipline taught me patience. It taught me how to survive storms without losing direction. There were days we had no money for basic needs. When we were starting our company, we couldn't pay salaries on time. I didn't take a salary myself for months. Others were enjoying life, buying things, going out. And I was just trying to hold the team together. I lived in the same small apartment, wore the same clothes, ate simple meals. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. That discipline gave me power, it gave me clarity, it gave me the ability to move forward, even when everything felt stuck. And over time, the world began to respond. People who once doubted started asking questions. People who laughed started to listen. Opportunities that once ignored me started to knock on my door. But by then, I had learned not to be controlled by excitement either. I'd learned that freedom is not about doing whatever you feel. It's about knowing what's right for your future and choosing that again and again. You see, without discipline, even success becomes dangerous. I've seen many people rise fast and fall even faster. They win once and think they can relax. They get comfortable and stop paying attention to the small things. They start spending more than they earn, speaking more than they listen, reacting more than they reflect, and slowly, without realizing it, they lose everything. Discipline is what protects success. It's what keeps you grounded when things go well, and what keeps you going when nothing goes your way. There was one particular year that tested me more than any other. Everything seemed to be falling apart. Deals we depended on collapsed. People we trusted left. The pressure was so heavy that I couldn't sleep properly for weeks. Every day I was expected to show up like a leader, while inside I was breaking. That's when I realized discipline isn't just about working hard. It's about managing yourself when everything feels out of control. I didn't escape to distractions. I didn't blame anyone. I didn't pretend things were okay. I just focused 1 hour at a time, one problem at a time. Slowly, we rebuilt. And what I learned during that season stayed with me forever. Freedom doesn't come from escaping responsibility. It comes from mastering it. When you can say no to what doesn't serve your purpose, when you can control your habits, your time, your focus, that's when you feel powerful. That's when you move through life on your terms. Not because you're lucky, but because you're disciplined. And that discipline gives you peace. A kind of peace that money can buy and failure can take away. Now, when people ask me what they should chase, success or freedom, I tell them the same thing: chase discipline. Because with discipline, you'll earn both. And without it, you'll lose both. Don't fear sacrifice. Don't avoid the hard path. Choose structure. Choose self-control. Choose the long game, because one day when others are still chasing comfort, you'll be living in peace they can't understand. Discipline now means freedom later.